Okay, so it's about 7 o'clock, at least by that clock. So why don't we get started? For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Ryan. I'm on the board. I do emails and stuff. And I volunteered to talk this time about what we might be working on and worried about in March for beekeepers. In particular, how we might go about installing nukes and packages, feeding, and I'm going to show how you can do splits with a double screen board or a snell growth board. I'm not sure that that's a really common thing. Show of hands, people who use double screen boards? All right, so that might be the new thing for people. But before we jump into that, maybe a couple small things. We have our new president, which is why we are still around. So go ahead, Brian, stand up. Hey. He's more than happy to hear all your complaints, and he can give you his contact information for all of that.
Yep.
But we're really glad to have him. He'll be giving, I think, next month's talk.
Yes.
Yeah. Some other things that are going on in the background. Let's see, you brought up about ordering bees as a club. We are not doing that this year. Last year it turned into a little bit of fiasco for the previous president, so we opted not to go through that again. You do need to get bees. The people we bought them from is Hog's Eye Apiary. We got them from some beekeeping supply in Russellville. They appear to be still selling them. There still might be packages available to buy, and if none of that works, maybe you can buddy up with another beekeeper and make a split with them if you don't have bees yet. Let's see. In terms of classes, normally we would try to run a class in the winter, so anyone who goes to that class can be ready. We did not get that together, obviously. And so what we decided we would try to do is to create an online class, so it will always be available for people when they need it, and it will be a resource from then on. We're working on that as well. I just finished recording 27 videos for that and sent it to the board for review. And so we'll find a way to make it so you guys can check some of that stuff out too when it's ready. Another topic was having a virtual meeting where we could just talk shop, talk bees, and not wait for the month with a formal topic, but haven't gotten that together yet, just for not great reasons. But those are some things cooking in the background. How's everyone's bees doing with this awesome weather of it being spring and then snowing?
They were out today.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're probably just checking to make sure the world didn't end.
Mm-hmm. No bees.
No bees?
Anyone else? Any bees yet.
Anyone else noticing anything interesting with their bees? Are they doing okay?
Yeah.
Making it? Yeah.
Before the snow, mine were actually bringing pollen in. I don't know from where.
Really?
But they had pollen on them when they were coming in.
Way to go.
That's great.
I will say, with the weather being what it is and kind of whiplashy for us, this can create a tenuous time for your bees because they may want to repopulate very quickly, and then it snows, and then there's a freeze, and there's not pollen. And so if they populate too quickly and there's not enough food, they can starve out in the last month or two right before spring. So just keep an eye on it if you can. It's getting close enough to seasonable weather where you can start doing liquid feed again. You can also equalize weak hives if they're coming out of winter weak. But yeah, I know I went to go check my hives, and it was all hands on deck for a little while with the weather being what it was. I think they're going to pull through this last month. Anything anyone wants to share about their bees or what's going on before we jump into some of our topics? Cool. So today we're going to talk a little bit about installing nukes and packages, more specifically about nukes, since we have someone installing a nuke for the first time. Is anyone installing a package for the first time?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Nuke, sorry.
Nuke? Okay. So we'll talk about how to install a nuke, and we will talk a bit about feeding, and then I will show you a bit about how to go about doing splits with a double screen board. And my sort of expectation for this is interrupt with any comments and opinions you've got throughout this. I'm not going to claim to be an expert, so if you've got a way you like to do it, just let us know, right? We all know beekeeping is like very personal. You ask 10 beekeepers a question, you get 11 answers, and that's perfectly fine for this. So ask questions, share your experience, and we'll go from there. So let's talk about nukes. So I just have some stuff up here just for mostly for the splits, but we'll talk about nukes. So when you get a nuke, you know, nukes and packages have this element of timing to them, in that you will be told when to pick them up, and you need to pick them up promptly. Nukes are typically going to be put into like corrugated plastic boxes. Bees tend to overheat pretty quickly in those, and so trying to pick them up same day, punctually, is a great idea. You also need to think about logistically how you're going to get your bees from wherever you're getting them back to home. If you have a pickup truck, this can be easy because they can be in the back. If you have a sedan, well, you get to ride in a car full of bees. They do sell lovely little mesh bags that you can wrap your nuke in to keep the bees contained. Most beekeeping shops will sell it. You can get them on Amazon. Yes?
We bought a laundry bag.
Yeah, laundry bags
With a
work.
drawstring.
So a mesh bag, mesh laundry bags work to pull it tight.
All guys sells them right
Yeah.
there on site.
Yeah, that's usually a pretty common thing to see them right then and there. So keep that in mind. Now, when you get to your bees and you get them to your site, installation for a nuke is pretty simple. What you'll have your brood box, and basically all you need to do is take out 5 of your frames. About like so, and just carefully put the frames back in the nuke. You just place them in there. As you do it, as you pull each frame out from your nuke, try to do it over top of your box, because you don't know where the queen's hiding in there, and you don't want to be like, oh, she's over here, and then she falls in the grass, you step on her, and then you need to go find a queen. So try to do it over your actual brood box. Check each one. When you find the queen, you know she's there. Very carefully put her in there with the frames.
They don't squish it.
Yeah, try not to squish her and roll her, but just put every frame in there, one at a time. It'll help, you know, I said pull 5 frames out because you're going to get 5. Probably a good idea to actually pull 6 frames out so you have a little wiggle room, but either way, you're going to put the 5 frames in the middle of your box. And then there's going to be a bunch of bees sitting in that box when you're done. So we want to get them back in the box if you can. You can just leave the box open near the front of the hive, and if you're lucky, they'll wander back in through the front once they realize the queen's inside. Another option is take the box, give it a little tap so all the bees float to a corner, and then dump them in your box real quick, close it up, and make sure they have food. That's about all there is to installing a nuke. You're going to need to give them a few days to acclimate, make sure the queen's still there and laying and everything. There is a chance they abscond, which is the fancy word for saying leave and go find a better home. But you need to give them a few days to acclimate to their new home. You may not see any evidence of a laying queen yet if she's a virgin queen and hasn't mated, but typically that'll be not the case for a nuke. So a few days you'll be able to check and see what's up. Did I get that right? Is that?
Yeah. One thing that I do, catch swarms, which is basically pretty
Yeah.
close to the same. I catch the queen, find her, catch her, put her down in there, put her up high, and leave it in there for a couple of days to make sure that everything's acclimated. Then release her, and then.
So you like cage her for a few days?
Yeah, cage her for a few days, because I can still take care of her,
Yeah.
whatever she needs. And if you've got feed in there, she'll take care of them, or they will take care of her, and then release her, and then it's not as likely that they will try to
Okay,
find.
so you kind of pin them down there a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
I usually do that on every swarm that I catch.
All right.
I try to find a queen, sometimes you don't, but
Yeah.
90% of the time you can, if
Okay.
you just really pay attention.
That's interesting. Brian?
For a nuke, the thing that I found that works really well, before you get to that, usually you get the bees either very late at night or most likely first thing in the morning. You take the nuke box and you put it where your hive will be. You open it up and you allow your bees to start, they'll come out, they'll start orienting, and they'll start going. And the best part of that is, if you wait till like 10 or 11, you will have less bees in that box. So when you go to move them, you have a whole lot less. You can move them over, and when the bees come back, they're going to see the new box, but it's right place, they're gonna go in and they just quickly adopt. If you don't do that and you open the top, you can get a big face full of bees that wanna get out, so.
Yep. So it's interesting, that's a kind of a clever way to try to manipulate their natural like instincts for orienting. And for the newer beekeepers, there's a saying about you either move 3 inches or you move them 3 miles. And bees are pretty good about knowing an area they belong in, but not precisely where home is. And so this idea that you can put a nuke right here, and they'll say, well, that's my home because it's close enough, is a peculiarity to them that you can try to take advantage of by doing what Brian mentioned.
Yeah.
And the same thing's kind of true also, like if you still have bees in the box and you leave them nearby, odds are they'll make their way back into the hive when you're done too. Because they're like, well, that's home-ish, and they'll go in, and they can smell the queen and other things. Any other tidbits, things to know? Controversy about installing nukes?
I think nukes tend to abscond less than, say, a package, because nukes will come with live babies, resources, things
Yeah.
they don't want to abandon.
They have an established team for them.
Yeah, so they tend to be less leavy than you would have with somebody else.
Yeah.
The only other thing that might be worth calling out is depending on the nuke you get, they tend to, they're gonna have two frames of brood, say, that are about to hatch. So sometimes checking them and understanding that they may quickly outgrow that single box. They are coming ready to expand. Making sure you have that room is important, because if you just put them in a box and say, I'll come back in a month, they'll probably be full. They'll probably actually have expanded too much, ran out of room, and decide to swarm.
Yeah, and this gets into maybe while a good producer of nukes will have prepared nukes exactly that way, stuff happens. And so a bad nuke may not have brood ready to hatch, or it may be nuke ready to swarm. So timing about nuke and getting it installed quickly is a pretty important aspect of this. You don't want to say like, well, I'll sleep in the yard for a couple days and see what happens. That's generally not a great plan. You want to try to install it quickly. And inspecting your nuke as you go to make sure it's in whatever condition it's in is a good practice. And even after you get it installed, there's no guarantee that you got a great queen. There's no guarantee that you got a good or a bad either way, and so you still have to come back and check. You could get a nuke that looks perfectly healthy, and in a month they're just not taking off. And it could be that the queen's not great. So it's still something you have to keep an eye on and be ready to adapt. If you did everything right and it's still not working out, stuff happens. You ready to talk about food, feeding bees?
Can you talk about foundations too?
Foundations?
Because I noticed your foundations were black.
Oh, yeah, so
Do you like the black?
I just prefer plastic frames, and generally when I order deep plastic frames, they tend to come in the color black, and that's, I don't know.
The black makes it easier to see the eggs.
Yeah,
I think that's the theory for it. I don't know if I can see them any better for sure, but
Yeah, not mine.
yeah, I've never really selected a color; they just always show up.
Yeah, mine are not, mine is the yellow, they're yellow.
Even a full plastic frame? Really? I've never seen a yellow one.
And I put black ones in, the bees did not like them. They did not, so I don't know, I know they're probably colorblind, I don't know what color they actually see then.
The thing with plastic frames, if they don't like it, is they may not recognize it as a good base to build cone.
Yeah.
So one of the things that any frame, but particularly plastic frames like that, you can get them pre-waxed,
Yeah.
but by gosh, if you have wax that you can melt and just kind
roll
of
it.
brush on, you can do YouTubes and whatever else of watching beekeepers experiment of no wax, factory wax, and then painting it on. The bees will quickly adapt if you have a good amount of wax on them.
Yeah.
So if you were running into problems, that might be a good place to start.
I do know that when you buy these plastic frames, they do come with an option to be like minimal wax, normal wax, and double wax. I personally just get whatever's normal, and my bees seem to do okay with it, but I have heard the preferential stuff with bees. I just haven't experienced it myself yet, so. I just keep buying plastic frames because I don't want to think about anything. I'm just lazy.
We've taken, the wax and put it in a crock pot and melted it,
Yeah.
and then getting those little tiny rollers, paint rollers, and
Yeah.
then just.
Yeah,
rolling it on.
your burr comb, your extra wax you build up over the first year, keep
Yeah.
that next year, just paint it on your new frames and then they will go fast.
But two frames when they're side by side, and one's double waxed or waxed and one's not, they'll build on the waxed one first.
Well, I bet they will, yeah.
They like it better.
I just haven't tried a double wax versus any of the others, I just buy
Mine are
them
wooden
normal.
frames anyway.
Yeah.
Mine are wooden frames.
Yeah, so if you buy wooden frames, then yes, typically your plastic foundation or even your wax foundation is gonna be yellow, that you pop into place.
Yeah, but they did not, they avoided the black ones. So
Really?
I don't know, I did wax them, because I had, burnt comb left
Mhm.
from the year before, and I melted that in a crock pot. It's wonderful, used the rest for chapstick, but, so I did try that, but they did not.
They didn't take to it?
No, I don't.
Did you put it on the outside or did you kind of bring it towards the center? Cause I have seen where if you put new frames on the outer edge, they
Yeah.
won't
Touch it.
They won't touch it.
Yeah, because they work from the inside out.
Yeah.
don't they?
So
Yeah.
if you take a couple from the, edge, move them over and put that closer to the brood, they tend to view that as a
I'm
necessary.
an experiment.
And some people will like, so if you have some that are well drawn out, you put one that's not right in between, so that they're like, oh, that's a new one, and they just start working on it. You call it checkerboarding sometimes. But the plastic, all plastic ones, at least for the deeps, tend to all be pure black. The medium ones, white is an option as a color, or that's their default. But yeah, that's a little bit about that. Let's talk about food. So pollen patties. Who likes to use pollen patties? I got a violent head shaking no back there.
I just end up feeding hive beetles.
Yeah.
They just come en masse every time I put them in.
So for me, I've read plenty of stuff about the controversy for pollen patties, like everything that is in beekeeping. Last year, I did feed both of my hives a bit of pollen, and I found that their population just erupted right after that. So I was really happy with it. I'm going to try the experiment again this year. If anyone's interested in using pollen, try to source as high quality as you can. There's plenty of things that can go into pollen patties that is whatever. And then, they come in these long, thin things. You don't have to give the whole patty to a thing. You can cut them in half, which is fine. And you can just lay them on top of the frames and let them have at it. So I'll be trying that again this year and see what happens. My comparison was a year prior where they didn't have quite as strong a start as they did when I gave them pollen. So I'm going to see if that happens again. But that's a bit about pollen. It's one of those maybe good, maybe not. Definitely not required. But sugar syrup is, so let's talk about that. So for our newer beekeepers, I'm going to describe sugar syrup in 3 basic categories. One of them is heavy syrup, and this would be anything above a 1-to-1 sugar to water ratio, where there's more sugar than water. That type of syrup specifically is beneficial because it can stay liquid in cooler temperatures, and it does not spoil as fast. It's really useful for getting into winter and ready for winter because it helps the bees store food supplies. It is bad at other things. Now the next tier down from heavy syrup is your sort of standard 1-to-1 syrup. This is what pretty much every beekeeper learns about in every course. It's what you're taught, it's what everyone's encouraged to use all the time. It's a solid all-around choice for a lot of things. And when you're feeding bees, in particular, the timing is going to be anytime they look like they're struggling. It doesn't matter the time of year unless it's too cold for syrup. And especially now in spring and in the fall, feed is important. Our weather may not be so cooperative that we get a lot of great plants and blooms and nectar flows that they can survive, so supplementing with feed makes a massive difference to the bees and equalizing what they have available. The next type of syrup is thin syrup. Who here uses thin syrup? More water than sugar. Okay, I'm a big advocate and have had wonderful experiences using thin syrup. So thin syrup, there's been some research done about the effects on a hive for the type of feed and the ratio of feed. I don't expect, though I'll ask, does anyone here use high fructose corn syrup to feed their bees? Cool, don't start.
No, what are you thinking?
Well, so there's reasons why it happens, and mostly it's for commercial operations, because high fructose corn syrup doesn't really spoil. It's readily available, it's cheap, requires nothing, but not easy on the bees. They don't digest it easily. Plain old table sugar and water works well for us. So anyway, this research, why I asked is they compared things like high fructose corn syrup to regular table sugar and everything else. High fructose corn syrup performed the worst. And what they were really looking at is, compared to their control hives, what was going on in the hive based on after they fed it. And what they found was the type of feed, high fructose and regular sugar, and the density of the syrup made a massive difference in terms of wax production, brood, and a lot of other qualities that most of us beekeepers want. The heavier the syrup, the less productive the hive gets. The thinner the syrup, up to a point, the more productive the hive gets. And so thin syrup at a ratio of 1.3 parts water to 1 sugar wound up being the highest, created the most productive hive that they had. This is what they were able to study. So for me, what I've been doing for the past couple of years now is I try to default to thin syrup unless there's an extenuating circumstance that I would choose a heavier one. So if I think my bees are low on food supply, I will use a heavier syrup, but otherwise, I want them to be as stimulated and active as possible, so I use thin syrup instead. There's nothing magical about it other than the ratio is different. It will spoil faster, that's a concern, but if your bees are like mine, they eat all the syrup you can give them within days or a week, so that's not too much of an issue. Now, when it comes to feeding bees at that odd ratio, I thought I might do you guys a favor and tell you like how to do 1 to 1.3 pretty easily. Actually, before I do that, this is a nit of mine. It's a thing that annoys me. Whenever you see 1 to 1, does anyone know if that's by weight or volume? Sure?
Wait.
No one ever says. That's the problem with it. I'll give you a hint though. A cup of water and a cup of sugar weigh about the same. So it tends to work out either way. Thank goodness. I do get annoyed that no one specifies it. So, but for us as beekeepers, it's more convenient for us to work by volume because none of us measure food by weight. When we put it into a feeder, we have a gallon feeder or a quart feeder. That's all volume, so you might as well work by volume. So, for thin syrup, here's the ratio that I will tell you. If you wanted to make a quart or a gallon of thin syrup, you use 0.75 for the sugar. So if you're making a gallon of thin syrup, you're going to use 3/4 of a gallon of sugar. That's how you can quickly do that weird thin syrup math. And so for my specific, what I'll be doing soon in the next week or two is I will begin to put on some heavy syrup, or not heavy, but 1-to-1 syrup for my bees for about a week or two, and then I'm going to immediately transition back to thin syrup, just so they can start getting the stimulation without me being concerned about food supplies for them. So if you haven't tried thin syrup, I would highly recommend giving it a shot. It works really, really well.
Can you go over the proportions again?
Yeah, it's 1 part sugar to 1.3 parts water. So more water than sugar. And if you're making it, I would tell you to reverse it and say one part volume to 0.75 parts sugar, or 0.75 parts sugar. You could also look at it as a 4 to 3 if that's convenient for you. If you have a hives and numbers of 4, that works out pretty easy too. You can also make this a little easier by just taking a 5-gallon bucket and marking it. Like if I need to make X many number of gallons, you can just mark where you fill the sugar line to, and then another line where you mark the water to, and then you don't have to think about it ever again. Does anyone do free feeding? You know, a single communal feeder for everything? No? So I've bumped into a few beekeepers that do it. I've heard all the woes about it. I can't say anything about it myself. I can see the merit of it if you have a lot of hives and managing a bunch of feed. They could be a bit obnoxious, but the cons of it are you can't control what else is feeding, and you can't control what diseases and pests come home. And so if you are not really on top of your disease and pest management, it's a great way for that to get away from you and lose your hives. What else about feeding? What has anyone else found that's worked well for theirs? I kind of cover the syrup ratios and how I look at it. What have y'all?
Hive Alive.
Hive Alive?
I used it this year,
Yeah.
but I don't know the results or hadn't been in to see if they make very much of it or what, so.
I know John Price, our previous president, swears by Hive Alive.
Well, I mean, I'm trying,
Yeah.
we'll see.
I haven't
But
been
if
to-
anybody else needs
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
I've got an extra, so.
I've used Hive Life for the last 2 years.
Worked out
It's
well
worked
for you?
really well.
Yeah. So Hive Alive is a feed supplement. They actually sell pre-made feed bags as well if you don't want to mix it yourself. It's
That's
made,
what I've got.
yeah, it's made with like various seaweeds and stuff in it that's supposed to do great stuff for bees. Most people I know that have used it really, really like it. It'll be my first year using it. I got to talk to the owner at one of the beekeeping conventions this past year, and he's this really nice Irish guy. Very, very convincing that you should buy all of it from him. So there's other supplements like Honeybee Healthy and a few others that exist, but Hive Alive seems to be the one that people really, really like.
Lemongrass.
Lemongrass, spearmint, things like that are also useful supplements. Yeah, and I think that's part of the Honeybee Healthy is lemongrass and spearmint. One footnote about things with lemongrass, spearmint. These are things that are highly desirable to bees. If nothing to worry about if you only have a few hives, but if you have more than maybe, I don't know, we'll just pick a number, 4 hives, and you start using that stuff, all the bees are going to smell it and want it. This can prompt or really highly encourage robbing behavior in your bees because they're all going to want it real bad, and so you might have what thought was going to be a really nice day inspecting your bees turn into a frenzy over that wonderful, delicious stuff you gave them. So just keep an eye on that as well. So, if there's nothing else about syrup, I would say, depending on whether, if you're not feeding, it's time to start. If it freezes again and the weather drops below freezing, that's going to be a problem. But this is about the time of year when the bees are starting to wake up and get busy again. To me, in my crazy brain, March is when the light turns green on beekeeping. Before now, it's like, let's see what happens, but March it's time to get ready, because the bees will be ready real quick, they'll start getting ready, they'll start being ready to swarm, and so as a beekeeper, it's time to be ready to feed and get ready for it. So yeah, it's a busy month for me, in terms of what I'm thinking about and getting ready for. And I don't even have all my stuff built and ready yet, so that's not great. So let's talk about splits, unless there's anything else about feed. Okay, how do you all like to split your hives? Walkway splits, another method? Walkway split?
That's the best way, that way you can get a message, right?
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Just catch them from the side. That's the way I like to do it.
The walkway?
Yeah.
Okay, what's a walkway?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so, and again, this is another one where you can jump in. So a walkway split is called that because it is super simple for a beekeeper to do, and it involves you doing very little work and then walking away. So the basic premise is you have a hive, and you're like, oh man, I should split that hive. When you take another box, you move half the frames to a new box. The frames that you choose matter. You want to pick frames. It's going to be usually 5 frames. You're going to pick a few frames that have lots of brood and the rest with food. You're going to plonk them in a new box, fill it all both out with frames, and then you walk away. Now, that's the simplest way I can describe it. There are obviously nuances to it, like any splits that you make need to be aggressively fed. Populations can be cut in half. There is a question as well as to where you're going to put the queen and how you're going to get a new queen. So the laziest way possible is you let the new hive make an emergency queen. Typically this type of queen is going to be not as good as a either bot queen, swarm queen, or another kind. But it is an option if you let them do an emergency queen. If you choose to do an emergency queen, as soon as you put the frames in that new box and close it up, they will realize that they are without a queen and begin the process of raising a new one. And when bees choose to make an emergency queen, they kind of take a, let's start as many things as possible and see what works out for us. And so they will take larvae, they will take eggs, they will take everything they can to make that new queen. And so when you go back and check in a few days and you see emergency queen cells, most likely those queen cells are going to be made out of larvae, which means they've been robbed of several days of proper development as a queen. So if you wait a few days, you come in there, you see those cells, but then you see a couple new that are getting started. Some advice would say, go ahead and pinch off the oldest ones, the ones that are made from the larva, and let the newest ones stick around, because those are likely to be made with an egg as opposed to larva. And it's a way to try to get you a better queen. Now, if you make a split, if you want to deal with emergency queens, you can go ahead and put a new queen in with a cage or something else, and there you go. That's a walkaway split. Any other advice about walkaways?
If you can catch a queen cell.
Yeah, if you can get a swarm cell right out of here and
If
pop
you
it in
get a
there.
swarm cell, make sure it's in there and make sure there's no more in that one.
Yeah, so if you
You've
catch
got
it,
pretty good luck,
yeah.
but then they still could swarm. 'Cause
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
So because swarm queens tend to be the best queens because they're made intentionally from eggs, so they're the best developed. If you have this amazing talent of timing things perfectly,
yeah, I mean, that's timing.
you can find swarm cells on the bottom and say, oh, this one wanted to swarm, perfect time, or maybe I'm late, we'll find out, and you do a walkaway split, but you put the swarm cells in your split, so a queen hatches here, ready to go, and hopefully the hive that said, we want to swarm is like, oh, everything's better. But there's no guarantee of that, so they can swarm again anyway. And then you lose a lot of bees, and you might have one sticking around. So that's a walkaway split, and swarm cells, you can always try to use swarm cells to make a queen. It's just, you're getting to that edgy part of, they wanted to swarm, can you stop that behavior? Generally speaking, that's a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that you
And
stop.
then hopefully you can catch that.
Yeah, if you're lucky to get that swarm
Yeah,
back.
get that swarm. And I've had pretty good luck.
Yeah, so, and for that, right, you're setting up swarm traps. Right, yeah.
And then if they swarm in a spot where I'm outside most of the time, if I see them, I just automatically go to them, and then I'll just put them in a new box and make sure there's a swarm cell in there, and watch that, and make sure that it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and then put her in a new box, start her off as new.
Yeah.
And then I'll put her in a cage, make sure she stays there.
Track.
That's a lot to manage, man.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of juggling.
Yeah. If you wanna keep them, that's how you gotta do it.
Yeah. Let's talk about double screen boards, unless there's anything else we want to talk about for a walkaway split. So, double screen boards are a fascinating tool. I didn't learn about them until I think maybe a year and a half ago. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, I want to try it. And then I had to just like watch videos about this over and over and over again because it just pickled my brain a bit every time I watch it. It's actually not hard, but I think you have to like get over this mental hurdle of it first, and it's really obvious. So I will try to get you to the obvious part about it. So bear with me. So think about the idea of a split as being taking one hive and half of its stuff with the brood and the food and putting it in a new hive, and there's your split. A double screen board is just a different way for you to control exactly how this happens. So I will show you what it does, how it works, and some of the options you get with it. It's not so fundamentally different from a walkaway split, but you get a lot more control out of it. So you've got your hive and you want to split it. A big part about doing splits is timing. So you need to time it either because you know they're going to swarm, or you found a swarm cell and you're hoping you can save it, or you are going to purchase queens and they're here and you're not ready yet. There's all kinds of timing issues that go into making splits perfectly, where your queen may be ready, your queen may not be ready, they're ready. There's all kinds of things that happen. The walkaway split is sort of throw the solution at the problem and hope it works. You can just, it's not quite optimal. So double screen board allows you to control a lot of these variables. So here's the way it works in a nutshell. You do need a double screen board, and the magical part about this is there's a gap, right? 2 screens, and there's a gap between it. This gap breaks the pheromone scent between the bees, so anything on one side can't smell the queen on the other. So this forces anything above can't smell the queen below, and anything above thinks it's queenless and therefore wants to be a new hive. That's how this works. So it takes advantage of the fact that they cannot smell and interact between it, and this forces them to say, oh gosh, we're queenless. It also has, this one does, not all of them do, all these different entrances available. So there's 4. Now if you look up how to use this, you will find all kinds of convoluted schemes around open on day 3 this entrance, and then on day 5 like this entrance, and then on day 7 go back. All this nonsense. Nobody has time for that. You can have fun with that. I'm not doing that. So I'll tell you the simplest way I know to do it. So we're going to make a split. So here's how it works. I've got box number 1 here. I'm going to take my 5 frames, two solid brood, 3 of brood and some food, plonk plonk. Make sure they got food. Make sure they got food. Now, I would recommend that you keep the queen in the bottom box, the original box. And the reason for that is it's just going to be a little easier on you if you do it. You don't have to, but it's nice to know that she is down here, because you don't want to be taking all this stuff apart all the time to check. So if you keep her down here, you don't have to worry about one more thing and open all this stuff up all the time. But if not, it's fine. You don't actually have to know where she is. You'll just have to inspect to find it out later. So here she is on the bottom. Here we are on the top with our new split. What we do, imagine the hive is pointing out this way, the entrance is. Lock that down. I'm going to open up the back. And this is a double screen board split. So what's happening is, got my new hive up here. I can go ahead and put a new queen in immediately, because this hive now thinks, oh gosh, I don't have a queen. It's ready to receive one. By putting the hive entrance in the back, something happens. So as I'm putting bees in here and shake them in here, right, I'm going to get a mixture of nurse bees and forager bees. I don't really care about the forager bees in my split. So when they come out the back, they'll be like, this isn't right. I'm not facing the right direction. So they'll leave and fly, and they'll come right back into the front of the hive later. So they'll naturally return to their original home, leaving this one only full of nurse bees. So this is a way that you can protect your original foraging force and let them return home. It's also kind of why you want the queen down here, because you want to kind of let this one stew and percolate like the way it wants to, and let this one grow slowly, or grow as fast as it can. But you don't need to worry about the foragers; they're not your concern, really. The other thing that happens in here is, because these are treated as 2 separate hives by the bees, they're not going to interact, they're not going to be mad at each other, but also the heat from the hive beneath will rise up into this top hive. So this young new hive has to work much less to maintain itself and grow, because it gets to take the benefit of the heat from the hive beneath it. So this hive will have a couple of things going for it right out of the gate of extra heat. It doesn't have to deal with a confused foraging force, and it can take the queen immediately. So there that goes, and you can let this sit here for as long as you feel like. It's not going to be a problem. The only deal you have to deal with a beekeeper is, well, I do have to get in here and do an inspection or feed it. You have to top all this stuff off, which is one of the reasons why keeping her down here is good, because you don't want to have to take all of it off to just find her all the time. You want to know she's here. But otherwise, this can stay on. So you can leave this here for a couple weeks while your new queen goes out and mates. You can wait for her to be fully mated and laying before you pop it off into a new stand. It's totally fine. No problem. Now, is that so far pretty easy? Okay, now let's talk about some of the things that make this more interesting. Let's say I'm not going to do an emergency queen. I want to purchase a queen. Well, If I'm doing walkaway splits, I need to split the when I get my queen. If I'm doing a double screen board, I can split any day I want. So here's how that works. On my old hive, entrance reducer, or queen excluder, queen's down there. I can get ready with my new hive up here. This is still one hive, right? My queen's still down here. I know where she is. All this stuff gets worked on. All this stuff is there. It's ready. The day I say, oh, I got my queen ready. Cool. Take that off. Put this right back on. Congratulations. This hive now says, oh God, I don't have a queen. And I can put it right in. So I can have this done anytime I want and wait for the right timing for a queen to go in. That's one of the nice things about this is if you're trying to be like very optimal about queen acceptance and everything else, you can use this double screen board and a queen excluder to get the exact day you want, regardless of when the hive is ready and the queen is ready and all the other things. You can kind of use that extra bit of manipulation to your benefit. So that's a little bit about the double screen board. The main things are, as soon as you put this in, the top box will say it's queenless. And then you need to be ready to deal with it or it's going to make an emergency queen. The other thing is the foraging force will return back if you open up the back entrance, because it'll cause them to be slightly disoriented. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of other weird methods that you'll find about swapping entrances every other day for whatever reason. I don't understand it, but it's there. That's kind of the double screen board. Yeah.
So when you take the top one and make it another hive,
Mm-hmm.
do you turn it so it faces east or south?
So like when I'm taking this all off to put it on suplex. So when this is all done, you can just put it however you want. So if I, like say for instance, all the entrances are facing me, I can just plonk it down, it'll be fine. This does get into some of the weird entrance manipulation that goes in. They're like, oh, close it and then put it back so they reorient, which is fine, except when they reorient, they don't know top from bottom, so they may return to the wrong hive. So they'll reorient as soon as you swap them, because there's just the wrong direction. But yeah, there's nothing magic to it. Yeah.
I've read some beekeepers, whenever they are doing that with their boxes, whenever they go to turn their box around the other direction, early in the morning before the bees start out, they pile leaves and brush.
Oh yeah, to stall them out in front.
So when they come out, they bump their heads, so they have to reorient.
Yes.
Maybe when they take off, they come
I do that
out.
That's a good point. So that is a really useful technique after you move a hive or reorient them, to force them to slow down and encourage them to reorient by just piling some debris in the front. The harder they have to work to get out, the more likely they'll be like, oh wait, this isn't normal. And reorient, so twigs, leaves, stuff like that is really useful for that. So that's, thank you for saying that. I should have brought that one up again. That's a useful one. Yes.
Okay, so all your forager bees go back to the bottom hive.
Yeah.
Do you have to feed more or less, or what the top hive?
So the top,
Because-
every split you make, you need to feed heavily. Because they don't have a foraging force, no matter what, and they're half of the hive they used to be, they need the food to supplement what's going on while they establish themselves, while the queen gets ready, while they start making brood. They need the food to get by. So you want to feed, for sure, your new split heavily. You may also need to feed your old split, depending on the condition it's in afterwards. One of the nice things about this method, when the foragers return back below, they can keep working. Like this can be, I'm showing this on a single deep. When I did my last split, I had 2 honey supers on top that they were working on. And so they're still working in there, filling it up with honey the whole time, while my new split is getting established. Because the foragers returned back. So they may not need as much food, but you absolutely should keep an eye on it. Because you can't always predict exactly how that stuff goes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot in your head, right? Like a lot of little moving parts. Any other questions about double screen boards? They have other uses as well. I think of them kind of like, a queen excluder or introducer. It's a simple tool, but it has more than one use once you figure them out. Double screen boards are one of them. You can build nukes with them just the same way. You can do lots of stuff because what they do is they break the smell of a hive. So anything above it's going to be a new hive to the bees. So you can use it for new creation, splits, and a few other things.
And if you need, if you've got going into winter, so you're going into winter and you've got one strong hive and one that
You can
you
stack
don't
them.
know, you just put it on top, put it the other direction,
Yeah.
and it'll keep it.
It'll help keep
It
it warm.
will help keep that warm, and then while you're feeding, whatever you're feeding.
Yep.
It
Yep.
will help keep them alive, so you'll have two instead of one, then back whenever it gets back spring.
Yep.
You can split them back, take them back off.
Yep.
Go back to whatever you was doing.
That's exactly right. The only real downside I have found with doing this is when you have to get into that bottom set of hives.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lot more stuff you're moving around.
Yeah.
And this isn't like, this isn't really nice to move around like maybe a bottom board would be. Like it's just another piece of thing you kind of like have to really get right. So it's a little bit obnoxious to do it, but I think it's worth it for the splits.
And then you can put handles on there if you have to.
Mhm.
You,
Yeah, you sure.
plus I make all my stuff, so
Yeah.
that won't be.
And there, in like all beekeeping equipment, there are plans that exist for making double screen boards. So you can make them however you needed to, if you needed it, a little more wood to put a handle on or something like that. But yeah, that's them. I've really enjoyed using these things. I found making splits with them to be more enjoyable and less worrisome because I can be very specific in my timing with things. And I know my split has a little bit of an edge because they get to enjoy the warmth from their parent hive. And I don't have to move things as quick. I can just say, it can sit there for a month and the queen can get established. Or I'm going to split now, and next week when my queen arrives, I'll go and put the queen in and do my split right then with the double screen board. So I have a little more options and flexibility, which I like. I feel like with the walkway, it's kind of a all or nothing, all at once. So that's that, but that's kind of my opinion and take on it. So it's not a must-have and necessarily superior, but I like it.
Do bees swarm every year? I mean,
All honeybees swarm. So if you think about, it's easy to think about honeybees in terms of like a bee, but if you think about honeybees as a colony, as a single organism, all organism has to reproduce or die. So a hive as an organism reproduces by splitting. So they feel in their environment they're getting cramped or some other conditions, and they're like, well, it's time to reproduce, so they split in half and swarm. That's just a natural thing for them. Certain species of honeybees swarm more often, or in less, less environmental pressure they'll swarm. Certain queens specifically will want to swarm more often. So it's an inevitable thing that they will swarm, but how much and under what conditions can be a little bit variable based on species or exactly what queen you want. But it's a natural thing. There's nothing inherently bad about swarming bees. For a beekeeper, most of us don't like swarms for kind of a few reasons. One of them is half the bees left, which means if you really were hoping to get a lot of honey, they just left. Half of them are gone. You're not going to get much then. You'll be spending the rest of the year recovering. The second reason, if you're not so big on honey, that means you have half the hive to recover before it goes into winter. And so that can put them at risk of not surviving the winter as well. That doesn't mean they won't, but they just lost half their population to it. So you can be a little more dodgy about that. You can always recombine hives and swarms. And you can always say, as a beekeeper, my stance is I will let bees swarm happily. It's just part of nature. Which maybe gets to a slight topic here of around whether or not honeybees can survive in the wild anymore. And that is a topic of debate. There haven't been any studies on that since 1995, and the 1995 conclusion was honeybees can no longer survive in the wild. So we don't know if they've recovered from that or not. So letting bees swarm could just be a death sentence waiting for them in the next year. Don't know yet. There hasn't been a study since then.
There's also just, they're gonna find some place to set up.
Yeah.
That may be your neighbor's house.
Yep.
So,
At their pool.
yeah, it can happen, it will happen, but it helps to maybe think ahead, because your neighbors might have a unexpected hive in their attic if they weren't expecting that, that people would set up. Dealing with your swarms before they happen is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky, real lucky.
In what way?
I just let mine swarm most of the time, and I've missed 2 out of about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I've got enough stuff around, they kind of land.
Yeah, they hang out in the base.
Yeah, hang out in my apiary, and then the wife say, hey, you got a bunch of bees up there. Oh, okay, I'll go get them.
Yeah.
So I'll go get them, put them back,
Yeah.
start them over again.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting, we're letting them swarm, but
Right.
it's creating that same, I've got 2 halves to get ready. But you always have the option to recombine it if you feel like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only 2 is way up high, and there's no way.
Yeah.
You just look at them and go, oh, I should have done something, but
Should have.
should have,
Way up
but,
there,
yeah, they're up there, I'm not missing.
Mhm.
So if you're combining those two, how are you feeding the top one?
If I'm combining them back,
If you're combining, put the box,
Yeah.
put every box on, how are you feeding that box then?
this one? So.
Because you have the opening over here, but you can't put,
So, yeah, so for feeding this hive, I couldn't use a bottom board feeder, because I don't have a bottom board. I could use a top board feeder or an in-box
well,
feeder.
like that,
Yeah.
I have one of those for
Yeah.
my long hive.
Yep, so those are all options to feed your bees still.
Okay.
But, yeah, your classic jar that sticks out.
Well, that's what I'm going,
That's
that
not
would
gonna
work there, that's too little,
Yeah,
so.
and I only use the ones that sit inside the box, so I never really had to think about it much, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
If you had only the ones that hang out the front, that would be an immediate problem to deal with.
Then you can, if you are using that, put your, top cover,
Mhm.
not the solid though.
The inner cover?
Yeah,
Yeah.
put it down, put your feeders up there.
Yeah.
And then put your lid and stuff back
I have
on.
a long hive.
Well, yeah,
It
you're
doesn't work
different.
in a long hive.
Yeah, it won't work, I'm just saying with
It's
that.
a lot more complicated with the long one, for
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah,
So I do use the front feeders,
Yeah.
the liquid.
Yeah, and then, you can get shims and other things to get a little more room for a bag of feed or something, but I just use the in the box feeders, so I don't
Like
worry
this
about it.
idea.
Yeah, it's fun. Got about 10 minutes left. Any other questions, comments, puzzles for your bees? For our newer beekeepers? Anything on your mind? Got a room full of decades of experience to tell you 1,000 different ways to mess this up.
Yeah.
Best thing is, whatever works for you.
It's fine.
That's-
If your bees are
Have
happy
fun
and
with-
healthy,
have fun with
it's
it.
fine.
Yeah.
And have fun.
Yeah.
Are we
Because, I
having
mean,
conventions?
I can tell you different ways.
The
I can tell
state
you different
convention,
ways, but
I assume there'll
until
be
you
one. I think
experience
it's
it, you won't know.
usually in September, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You were asking about top hives.
What's the
I
difference
have 2
between
of those.
hives?
They do.
Is there a set thing?
really
or-
shallow.
I mean, like.
You wanna pick a fight?
Take this room right here, you could set a
That would probably work.
50
So
hives
you
in
can
here.
search for
Okay,
Oh,
yeah,
that's a little
so-
close.
So if you've got,
So,
so mine, I built,
There's lots
but
of
I've got
advice.
a good amount of room.
I will tell you,
But I take the
it's
slats,
fine. So,
and all I
Yeah.
did was cut
commercial
a little
beekeepers
hole that big.
put 4 to
So
6
when I need to
bees
feed
on
them,
a single pallet.
take regular slat
I
out,
mean,
with this
1,
one that's got a hole.
2,
Again, this
3,
is
4.
not tall.
They're fine.
It's like that's 5 centimeters.
You can,
It's
I
really
arrange mine in
short.
a C shape,
So
so I
the
have
only
2
thing
and
that I
2,
recommend
2 and
about
2,
if you
2
find
and
one
2
of
behind me,
these,
so I can just walk in and work all my hives from behind.
I ended up.
Some
like
people just think that is the
wrapping,
most
like,
insane thing
carpet
ever,
wire
but I
around
don't
it
walk
so they
around, I
can
just
crawl.
do all my work
And
in a
then
spot and I'm
I had to
fine.
come and notch these to sit
And a
better,
lot of
so
other
that the
beekeepers will like,
bees
they have a,
kind
I
of
want
let them
that
go
much
involved.
space between
Bees
them all,
can
and I'll
climb
have
out
them in a nice
underneath
row
and
or
they'll
whatever.
Get trapped and die.
Your bees will be
But
fine.
you do have an
Whatever works for
option.
you in
If
the
you
yard that
search
you've
for
got,
something like this.
it's okay.
I
The main
have a
thing
couple
would be,
worst case scenario.
they need
but
about 5 to 6
it works
feet
pretty
of
good if you
space
need to
in
get
front of them, so the bees
feed, which
do their sort of landing and takeoff flights. But past that, you don't have to sweat it too much. Bees, like I said before, are good about knowing an area, but not precise location. So when your hives are close, they'll say, oh, home, and maybe this was their home, and they'll go right into that one.
A little bit of drift.
We call it drift. It's not a problem. The only
Because
real,
some of them will go over there, I mean,
Yeah.
it'll work out in the end.
generally bees are pretty, they're not like, oh, you're here, we're gonna kill you. They're like, oh, you're doing work, that's fine. They don't tend to sweat it too much.
Almond trees.
See, I put mine wide enough for my riding lawnmower to go through there.
There you go.
Because I'm not gonna have them like this and have to weed eat in between there.
Yeah.
Whenever I go like that and drive my lawnmower in between them.
Yep.
Now they get upset, but you know, that's the way it's gotta be.
Now, when it comes to drift, the downside of drift happening is, this hive can have a lot of mites, this one could have none, and now they both have a lot because they travel between. Another issue with having them close by is it could potentially make one of them think they should start robbing sooner when they can smell what's going on in another hive so close. But again, these are not end-of-world problems, these are just sort of consequences. It's nothing you can't deal with or manage, so whatever makes sense for you and your yard, your bee yard, is gonna be just fine. As long as they have that runway in the front, don't sweat it. Doesn't matter which direction they face, it's fine. I'll get roasted for all those things later, but it's fine. You can find plenty of examples of
Oh,
successful
yeah.
beekeeping with all of these variations. It's all fine.
Like I said, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Do you keep yours in the shade or out in the sun?
Mine's got about half shade and half sun. In the
Mine
morning
are in
or
the
the
woods.
afternoon, they'll get some shade, then they'll get some sun coming, they're right along the tree line.
Yeah.
And then they get sun most of the day, they get shade, then they get the evening, the late sun. But I've only got one hive now, everything else, I had a mess this year, so.
It happens.
Well, after
I
the
mean, it happens.
tornado,
I mean,
but
that's-
after the tornado, that changed though, because now I have no trees,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna have to see how they do with that.
I had a bunch of trees get knocked down because they're in the woods all around them, but not on my hive, so I was like, woo, get to use a chainsaw. In a bee suit. But yeah, made it through all that. Any other questions, thoughts? Things you're looking forward to this year?
Catching a bunch of swarms.
Catching a bunch of
Good
swarms.
Have you got
gloves.
any yet?
Me? No.
You
I mean, they'll probably be my own, so. I suspect in the next week or two, I'll be fishing them in.
Yeah, I need to get, I haven't even got my box. I left one up, forgot about it, and said, oh, I need to go get that thing.
I've never had them go into a swarm box, but by God, I've gotten them out of the trees. There was one.
I mean, I've caught them in boxes all the time.
Yeah, there was one year I just found them on the side of the house, like those weren't even mine, but never got them in a box. Wherever I'm at, it just doesn't work.
My only experience with a swarm was, my first year, I had 2 hives, combined them at the end, and then it got killed, I think, by yellow jackets. And so I just left my stuff out there because I wasn't gonna go haul it back, and I was all depressed about it. Come back, February or March, brand new hives moved in. Caught a swarm
Now,
by
see,
itself.
now, if you just leave the box out there, now see, now I've got 3 boxes. Now I've got 2 of them closed, one of them open. And I'll just, once it gets a little bit later, I'll open all 3 of them. And I have caught a swarm, the meanest swarm I've ever caught. These
Yeah.
things, you don't get close to.
There are wild bees out there, I know. this.
Yeah, well,
We got-
you know, you were saying that they can't survive. Well, that tornado in Rogers, they was calling beekeepers to try to come and get them. There was quite a few in that
So
tornado,
I didn't read all the details of the study, but I think the basic premise was, well, they
depending on what area probably.
Well, that and also like there's for how long? You
Yeah.
know, I think the premise of that research was most of those hives are gonna die within a year.
Yeah.
From varroa mites and other things. So yeah, they'll exist, but they may not survive on their own for long. But you know, it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Which gets to an interesting topic. You're catching a bunch of swarms, especially really early swarms. Are you catching the bees that want to swarm aggressively or not?
Yeah.
But you know, it's always a read.
I mean, that one, I think I know where it came from.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it was a neighbor down there that had one that was, I mean, you couldn't get 50 yards from it. And they was already starting to,
Yeah, it's.
and I said, well, I've got grandkids. I said, well, I'm not gonna
Not gonna keep those around.
I mean, I can't move them far enough away that,
Well,
I mean, they're all over the 20 acres, so
Mhm.
I can't have them on my property, so
you can just requeen it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
well, I've done got rid of them, so.
Okay,
ain't
I
no
was
big
about to
deal.
say, if your hive is, if you do get a swarm or a nuke or a package of bees and you're like, man, these are the meanest little suckers I've ever seen.
Spicy.
You
Yeah.
don't have to throw them all out.
Just get a new
You
queen.
just order a new queen, find the old one, pinch her, change it, and in short order, your hive will. take how many
It'll be
you
different.
Yeah.
Maybe not better, but different.
Different, there'll be a little bit. Now, I don't mind them coming up and bothering you a little bit, but,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just.
Come after you.
Brian, did you say you were gonna raise queens this year? No. This Brian. This Brian did. So several of us are gonna be attempting to raise queens this year. I don't know, I'm gonna be of the opinion I'm gonna try to raise 30 to 60 queens, because if I'm raising one, it's the exact same thing to raise that many more. I'm gonna try to do it early in the season and late in the season if it works out. So if anyone needs a queen and wants one of mine, sure, why not?
What variety would they be?
Mutts. I don't know.
Mutts, Arkansas, those
They're
are mutts.
What'd you say?
They're Italians, but I have one hive I really like that I'll use as my stock, and the rest, they're all gonna get requeened. with
When
that.
are you planning to have them?
I don't know, John and I are gonna do some grafting, I think this month, maybe, or April, so then 10 days after that, they'll be ready.
Maybe
So I don't
hit
know.
me up when you're looking to get ready, cause I've almost, whatever's with my place, they swarm, they just do, so I've almost come to the idea of just whole hog,
Requeen them all.
requeen them all.
Yeah.
It's not half the hive swarm, just take care of them for a year to have them swarm next.
Yeah. I'm doing it mostly out of just, I think it's fascinating, so I wanna see what happens. And I have one queen in a hive that I really, really like, and the rest, I don't not like them, but I have a favorite, so I'll keep it.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
It's like
And then I may be hitting you up.
You said it.
Yeah, let us know when your
Yeah.
queens are
Yeah.
coming off.
Yeah, sure.
Because I made that one hive I was telling you that I've got, may not have a queen. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And-
But the
and I know-
babies are still alive.
Our former president, John, wants to do it as well, so we went to a beekeeping, queen grafting class, we're pretty excited about it. And our new president, Brian's gonna be raising some, so. What's that?
I said, yeah, I gotta raise a bunch.
Yeah. So that could be another cool option for us if we're all interested in maybe some local queens, or at least just having a fallback, stuff happens. But with that, I think we're at time, so should we do the 50/50?
Okay, anybody else wanna buy 50/50?
You got no cash.
You get to draw it.
Me?
Yeah.
So how do you like your long hive?
Oh, they're easier to work because I'm short. Except it's vastly different than theirs.
Okay, last three numbers, 712.
Oh, that's me.
Yay.
1-2.
I picked that one for you.
Oh, thank you.
Go to your My New Bees fund.
My new bees fund, yes.
I've got 3 long hives and only one of them has.
Everyone, thank you for coming. I do want to say, me and the rest of the board, I'm going to speak on their behalf whether they want me to or not. We want to hear what you think about how we're doing, the topics we're bringing up, and how we're conducting this. If you have any ideas, we'd love to hear it. We're not going to be, I'm not going to promise we're going to do all the things you suggest, but we'd like to know. So
Bee fund.
that's, just let us know. We'd love to hear what would make this better for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.